This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Maybe you're listening on my website at henrywalker.org under audio messages, or maybe you're listening at podpoint.com/Henry Walker, or maybe you're listening on my YouTube channel, New Life Revival International Henry Walker. I want to start a new message today talking about that it's not over. Whatever you're going through, it's not over until the Father wins for you. But let's go to Father in prayer. First, Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. Help people to open up their spirits, Father, and not only receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. Let's go to Psalm 110, verse 1. Psalm 110, verse 1. Psalm 110, verse 1, again talking about that whatever you're going through, it's not over until the Father wins for you. All he wants is you to surrender everything to him, especially your flesh. Let him come into your spirit by his spirit, mortify the deeds of your flesh, and make you more and more like Yahshua every day, bringing the fruit of the Spirit out of your life. Love, joy, peace, longsuffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. It's that sanctification process. Every day he wants to work on us and take this junk out of our lives that should not be there. So allow him to do so. Any tradition that you have in your life that's not based on the word that you've included in your relationship to the Father through Yahshua, get rid of it. Ask him to help you get rid of it. And even things that you've been taught by maybe some other ministers that are not based on the word, research. Make sure, again, what you have in your walk with the Father through Yahshua is based on the word. On my website at henrywalker.org, I have about 300 messages. Wine is a mocker, the truth about drinking wine. Divorce and remarriage, the truth. When was Yahshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? The written messages at henrywalker.org. And so many more. And I have 2 free books on the bottom of my message page. One is named Noon, that talks about the feast days and how Yahshua is a Jew, was a Jew, always will be a Jew, and we need to follow in his footsteps. Every feast day he fulfilled with the exception of the last 3. Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, Sukkot, or Tabernacles. He was born on Passover, died on Passover, exactly 32 years old. Circumcised on the last day of unleavened bread. And you get that book Noon on the bottom of my written message page free. And also there's another book that's there that's free. Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? Explaining the so-called mystery of the Trinity. But back in Psalm 110, verse 1, talking about how whatever you're going through, it's not over until the Father wins for you. Psalm 110, verse 1, Yahweh said unto Yahshua, sit thou at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Sit at his right hand until he makes your enemies, which are really his enemies, when you surrender everything to him, your footstool. We go to 2 Kings chapter 13. Go to the left of 2 Kings chapter 13. Again, no matter what the situation looks like, be encouraged. Watch the Father move. When you're sold out to him, he will show up and show out for you and prepare a table for you right in the midst of your enemies. And to show your enemies what he can do with one person who sold out to him. Remember, everything was created by him and for him, and by him all things consist. And he's the one that's sitting on the throne, and he controls everything. Revelation 4:2, there's only one sitting on the throne. That's the Father in Yahshua. And 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 19, to wit, the Father was in Yahshua, reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them, and had committed unto us the word of reconciliation. And we are ambassadors for Yahshua. We allow the Father to use us to reconcile people back to Him. Revelation 4:2. As I said, there's only one sitting on the throne, and that's the Father in Yahshua. You're going to see the Father throughout eternity in the face of Yahshua. 2 Kings chapter 13 and verse 20. And Elisha died, and they buried him, and the bands of the Moabites invaded the land at the coming in of the year, which is around March, April, Nisan 1. And it came to pass, as they were burying a man, that behold, they spied a band of men, and they cast the man into the sepulchre of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood up on his feet. It's that double portion that Elisha got from the Father by following Elisha and staying with Elisha until Elisha was taken up into heaven in a chariot. He got this double portion that Elisha had. That double portion was still in his bones. And the man who was dead and cast into the sepulchre, it was all over for him. But no, the Father was ready to move through the man that was cast into the sepulchre of Elisha by using the anointing that was on those bones of Elisha to raise that man from the dead. And whatever you've given up on maybe, or whatever you think is dead, don't give up on your dream. No matter how long it's been, don't give up on your dream. The Father's telling me to tell you that today, that He is ready to move. But look unto the hills from whence cometh your help. Your help comes from Yahweh. Some of you have been waiting for a promotion and a new level. And promotion doesn't come from the east or the west or the south. It comes from Yahweh up north in heaven. Psalm 75, verse 6. In 2 Kings chapter 4, go back to chapter 4. Maybe it seems that this is the worst you've ever been, but you're close to a breakthrough. You surrendered everything to the Father. He is ready to move for you. Just hold on a little bit longer. Even now, on this podcast, He could touch you. It could be years and years that you've been in pain. But He could touch you right now, and I decree it. Just put your hand on the computer or on the cell phone. Be healed. Be whole. Marriages, be whole. In the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. There cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and I know that thy servant did fear Yahweh, and the creditor is come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen. So Elisha said, What do you have in your house? He said, I have nothing but a pot of oil. Then go borrow from your neighbors, and borrow not a few. Verse 5, so she went from him and shut the door upon her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told Elisha, and said, Go, sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. So look how it's not over until Yahweh moves for you. It seemed to be over with her probably and people that she knew, but no. She put faith in what the Father said to Elisha. And she had enough oil to retire, the Shunammite lady. In verse 33, Elisha went in therefore and shut the door upon him and her child, and he prayed unto Yahweh. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Elijah allowed the Father to use him until the assignment was completed. Find somebody in your life who can help pray with you, a minister who is going to go to eye with your problem and stand in the gap with you. In verse 38, and Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a dearth in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot and seed pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine and gathered therefore wild gourds in his lap full, and shred them into the pot of pottage, for they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat, and it came to pass as they were eating of the pottage that they cried out and said, O Elisha, there is death in the pot, and they could not eat thereof. And he said, then bring meal, and he cast it into the pot, and he said, pour out for the people that they may eat, and there was no harm in the pot. So maybe some people got involved in your life, maybe some people not from the Father got involved in your life, took money from you, took time from you, took love from you. And Father wants to bring new people, new situations into your life to replace those old, useless relationships. Maybe the Father wants to bring something new into your life and take away the memory of how people used you and took advantage of you, took money, as I said, took love from you, and give you a brand new beginning. See, it's not over in your life until the Father moves for you. And again, what he wants some of you to do is turn everything over to him, especially your flesh. Let him come into your spirit, mortify the deeds of your flesh, make you more and more like Yahshua, and bring the fruit of the Spirit out of your life, as I mentioned earlier. But that's the first step you got to take, and watch how he moves. We read in Deuteronomy some podcasts ago about how the Father brought them into a new land and drove out the enemies from them. So again, sit at his right hand. Right hand is a symbol of power. Sit at his right hand until he makes your enemies, which are his enemies, your footstool. And remember, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that comes against you in judgment, you shall condemn. Because this is your heritage. You're servants of Yahweh, and your righteousness is of him, said Yahweh. So again, that widow lady was down to nothing. And then the Shunammite lady, her and her husband could not have a child, down to nothing. But the Father moved. The Father won for them, and he could win for you. Go to 1 Kings chapter 17. These are examples of how the Father moved for people when it seemed that all hope was gone. 1 Kings 17, verse 1, and Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As Yahweh Elohim of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. Incidentally, the Father's reminding me, this ministry, we go back to our Jewish roots in Yahshua. What he taught the apostles, what the apostles taught to others. We don't go back to those ceremonial washings and the laws that so many Jews have. We allow the Father to show us what he wants us to learn out of our Jewish roots. And again, every one of those feast days have been fulfilled by Yahshua with the exception of those last three. Again, in my book Noon, which is free, the bottom of my message page, henrywalker.org, explains those feast days. And on my website itself, there's a message on every feast day. I read verse 1 again. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As Yahweh Elohim of Israel liveth, before whom I stand. Remember, we can only stand by standing on Yahweh and his word. There shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And then Yahweh said, Go by the brook Cherith. And verse 4, And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. And the brook dried up. Verse 8, And the word of Yahweh came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belonged to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain you. They saw the widow woman and asked if he could have a little water for him to drink. In verse 11, And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thy hand. And she said, As Yahweh your Elohim liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. Now, she never should have said that they're going to die. And verse 13, Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me therefore thereof a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for you and your son. For thus saith Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, The barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that Yahweh sendeth rain upon the earth. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah, and she and he and her house did eat many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by Elijah. She was in a tough situation. Had enough food for her and her son to live one more day. But she trusted Yahweh and what Yahweh said to Elijah. In verse 17, and it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and her sickness was so sore that there was no breath in him. Now she's the mistress of the house. So because of her faith, knowing that Yahweh was going to win for her, and have faith in what Yahweh said to Elijah, her title changed from a widow lady to the mistress of the house. And she and her son and the whole house ate for many days until her son died. In verse 21, Elijah stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto Yahweh and said, O Yahweh, my Elohim. This is so great that Yahweh is our Elohim. I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. Then Yahweh heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. So it looked like it was over for her and her son. And she said that her and her son are going to die. And she should not have said that because the son did die. But the father used Elijah to win for her and her son and the whole house. They ate throughout the famine. Maybe there's things that you are lacking in your life from a material point of view. But the Father can win for you. Just give your tithes to the Father, offerings if he prompts you. Just watch him move for you. Give him something to work with. And be led by his Spirit as to where you pay your tithes and give your offerings. Give it on good ground. If the Father talks to some of you, we have a ministry in Nassau, the Bahamas, of feeding the poor. If the Father speaks to your spirit about helping us, it goes right into Yeshua's hands. He multiplies it and uses the people in our ministry to give to the poor. Nobody gets paid any salary. It goes right into the poor. If the Father leads you to put an offering in this ministry into the hands of Yeshua to help feed the poor out there are people out there that have no place to live, sleeping on the beach, sleeping in cars, not any water either. So we give food and water. If the Father speaks to your spirit, about giving an offering into this ministry, every gift is tax deductible. We're a 501c3. You can go to henrywalker.org and click on the donate button, or you can go to podpoint.com/henrywalker and click on a donate button. So again, we're talking about it's not over until the Father wins for you. Please turn with me to 2 Chronicles chapter 14. Just go to the right, 2 Chronicles chapter 14. Again, talking about how it's not over until the Father wins for you. 2 Chronicles chapter 14, talking about a man named Asa. Asa was a good king in verse 2. 2 Chronicles 14, verse 2. And Asa did that which was good and right in the eyes of Yahweh, his Elohim. And as I said before, isn't it so great that Yahweh is our Elohim? In verse 9, and it came out against Zerah the Ethiopian with a host of 1,000,000 men and 300 chariots, and they came to Marishah. In verse 10, then Asa went out against him, and he set the battle in array at the valley of Zepatiah at Marishah. The enemy had more men than Asa, but he went right to the battle. And in verse 11, and then Asa cried unto Yahweh his Elohim and said, Yahweh, it is nothing with you to help, whether with many or with them that have no power. Help us, O Yahweh our Elohim, for we rest on you. And in your name we go against this multitude, O Yahweh. Thou art our Elohim, and let not man prevail against you. What other name could the Father have but Yahweh? Is there any other name you can think of? Wonderful Counselor. Those are titles. But that name, Yahweh, he revealed his name to Moses at the burning bush. I am that I am. And he told Moses, tell the people, this is my name forever. Yahweh. Yahweh is an action verb. And if you surrender everything to the Father, as I mentioned, he actively moves on your behalf. But so many people miss it. They don't know Yahweh sounds so Jewish. Well, Jesus is a Jew, was a Jew, always will be a Jew. But Constantine, 1700 years ago, tried to take everything Jewish very successfully at what the apostles taught. And so many people are connected to Constantine with that false doctrine. And what he introduces nowhere in the Word. Those holidays, they're all from pagan roots, nowhere in the Word. But so many wonderful people who love Yeshua are just doing it out of tradition, not studying it. And as I mentioned before, he was born on Passover, died on Passover. So every Passover, we celebrate his birth, his death. Besides talking about how on Passover he took them out of Egypt, we talk about Yeshua's birth and death. He's exactly 33 years old. And again, you can read that message on my website. Where was Yeshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? That one message destroys 3 different holidays. Christmas, Good Friday, and Easter. One message. My message is based on the Word. Those holidays are not based on the Word. But it's up to you. Study. Remember the congregation at Berea, they studied the Word daily. Eternal life is so important with the Father. Don't let anything of any pagan origin get in your relationship with the Father through Yeshua. And you can't say you never heard it. You're hearing it right now. What I'm saying is based on line upon line, precept upon precept. In verse 12, as a result of what Asa prayed, Yahweh won for him. In verse 12, so, again, as a result of what Asa prayed, Yahweh smote the Ethiopians before Asa, before Judah, and the Ethiopians fled. And Asa and the people that were with him pursued them unto Gerar, and the Ethiopians were overthrown, that they could not recover themselves, for they were destroyed before Yahweh and before his host, and they carried away very much spoil. And they smote all the cities round about Gerar, for the fear of Yahweh came upon them, and they spoiled all the cities, for there was exceeding much spoil in them. They smote also the tents of cattle, and carried away sheep and camels in abundance, and returned unto Jerusalem. So again, we're talking about the Father winning for you. That it's not over until he wins for you. But to win for you, you have to surrender everything to him. Let him work on you on a daily basis as he does with us. That sanctification process, making us more like Yeshua. Also, I want to mention to you, this is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception, that the Father is the agent of conception. Every podcast, I pray for the babies in the womb. Remember, around 18 days, the baby in the womb, their heart begins to beat. And around 4 months, the baby's heart in the womb is pumping about 25 quarts of blood per day. It's a beautiful life in that womb, not a tissue. Most scientists believe that life begins at conception, and the College of Pediatrics believes that life begins at conception. So we want to pray for the babies in the womb right now. Father, I ask you to touch the babies in the womb, bring them to a full birth, Father, and we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if any of you out there had an abortion, repent, ask the Father to forgive you, and go on and follow him into your purpose and destiny. Also, I want to mention to you, if your flesh is giving you any impure thoughts, any worry thoughts, fearful thoughts, anxious thoughts, just say out loud, Yeshua, I thank you for that crown of thorns around your head. That means my mind is protected by your blood. I only think your thoughts. And cast those thoughts to the Father. Let him deal with them. And also don't forget about the Sabbath. The Sabbath is Friday night, 6 p.m. to Saturday, 6 p.m. It's a wonderful time. As the Father draws you into his presence during some part of that 24-hour period, he wants to refresh you at the end of the week and give you more power to go into the next week, which starts on Saturday at 6 p.m. Remember, evening and morning were the first day, Genesis 1. The Sabbath was never done away with. It was written with the finger of the Father, the same finger that wrote to Belshazzar, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. The same finger that wrote on the ground the sins of the people who wanted to put that woman to death who was caught in adultery. The only finger the Father has is Yeshua's. So again, we're talking about no matter what it looks like, let the Father win for you. You think about Jericho, how formidable Jericho looked, but not to the Father. He said to Joshua, I want you to see Jericho. He told him to go around it 13 times, once a day for 6 days, and 7 times on the 7th day, or 13. 13 is a blessed number. It's a number of deliverance. And he wants to deliver you if necessary right now. Anything that is not of him, that he wants to deliver you, and you want to be delivered, I decree right now, be set free in the name of Yeshua by the blood of Yeshua. No matter how long you've been in bondage, be free right now. Be whole from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. Be whole physically, spiritually, mentally, financially, from this day forth, in the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. Again, all you have to do, which is very important, is surrender everything to the Father. And just receive those prayers I just prayed right now. Be set free and be whole in the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. Remember in John 11 when Lazarus had died, everybody gave up on Lazarus, but here comes Yeshua to the scene. And he said, Lazarus, come forth. Maybe you're buried in the past and maybe have given up hope, but be free right now. Be loosed in the name of Yeshua by the blood of Yeshua. And Father, I ask you to strengthen us all for this work in these end times, in this possible rapture season. Every message I have for so long has been in the rapture series. That's how close you're telling me the rapture is. So if any of you have any questions or any praise reports, and you want to email me, you can email me at contact, CONTACT, at henrywalker.org. I'll be so glad to hear from you. And if you enjoy these podcasts, tell other people about these podcasts, share, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember, till next time, this is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than anything or anybody in the world.